Hello everyone. The topic today we will be discussing is substance abuse, juvenile delinquency, violence and rape. For this topic, the objectives are: first we will be looking at substance abuse, the types of substance abuse, juvenile delinquency, characteristics of delinquent, causes of juvenile delinquency, then violence and rape. Under this we will be discussing about types of violence, causes of violence and prevention of rape and sexual violence. Substance abuse can simply be defined as a pattern of harmful use of any substance for mood altering purposes. Substances can include alcohol and other drugs which are illegal or not, as well as some substances that are not drugs at all. You might have seen a number of people are addicted to various drugs or substances even though they are not ill or advised by doctor or physician. We may define substance abuse as the use of illicit drugs or the abuse of prescription or over-the-counter drugs for purposes other than those for which they are indicated, or in a manner or in quantities other than directed. That is frequent or continuous consumption of a drug as a habit which may be harming a person socially, physically or mentally and can be called as substance abuse. People often use substances to relax and otherwise enjoy themselves. This poses a danger if dangerous and illegal substances are used. Generally, youngsters during pre-adolescence and adolescent stages try these on an experimental curiosity basis. Adolescents are vulnerable to the effects of substance use and are at increased risk of developing long-term consequences such as mental health disorders, underachievement in school, a substance use disorder and higher rates of addiction if they regularly use alcohol, marijuana, nicotine or other drugs during adolescence. However, more and more people develop addiction to various legitimate substances every day. Now, we will be looking at types of substance abuse. Under this, the first one is alcohol. Alcohol abuse is one of the most common of all the substance abuse disorders and it has a high potential for abuse. It depresses the function of the brain and continuous usage may affect liver and nervous system also. The various ill effects of consuming alcohol are liver disease, heart disease, digestive system disorders, mental health problems, etc. The second one is opioids. Opioids are again one of the commonly abused legal and illegal substances. Opioids are products extracted from the juice of poppy plant. They are highly addictive. They depress the function of the brain. The ill effects of these drugs range from nausea, vomiting, insensitivity to pain, increased urination, constipation, slow breathing, lung diseases and sometimes death, especially when used in combination with alcohol. The third type of substance abuse is cannabis product. These products are extracted from cannabis sativa and cannabis indica plants. They are found in many legal, medicinal and recreational markets across the country. The ill effects of consuming these drugs are cancer, infertility, tolerance, psychological dependence, etc. The fourth one is sedatives or hypnotics. This includes medicines prescribed for reducing anxiety and inducing sleep. These include barbiturates, benzodiazepines. The ill effects of taking these drugs are physical dependence, psychological dependence, craning, addiction and may also sometimes lead to death. The fifth type of substance abuse is cocaine. It is a white crystalline substance commonly known as snow. It is derived from a plant, cocoa bush, grown in South America. Crack is most addictive form of cocaine. The ill effects of consuming these drugs are fits, heart diseases, mental disorders, decreased breathing, etc. The next topic we will be discussing is juvenile delinquency. A violation of law or ordinance by individual below the legal age of the community is termed juvenile delinquency. It is essentially a legal concept. It does not include all acts of misbehavior or even serious misbehavior by children or youth, but only those acts that violate the law. The age of juvenile delinquent is not consistently set around the world. In India, this age limit is set at 16 years for boys and 18 years for girls. The other aspect in case of young persons is that there are certain behaviors which would not be considered criminal in nature if committed by adults, but they will be taken note of as crime if committed by youth. Adults are considered more responsible for their actions than are children or adolescents, and such juvenile delinquent behavior when performed by an adult is considered a criminal behavior. The next topic we will be discussing is characteristics of a delinquent. Certain patterns of behavior appear to be common among juvenile delinquents. Some of the common characteristics of delinquent personality are: the first one, many delinquents feel deprived, insecure and defiant. That is, most juvenile delinquents set out to break the law. Second, delinquency rates are many times higher for boys than for girls. That is, girls commit fewer delinquencies than boys. The third characteristic is many juvenile delinquents are also excitable and impulsive. Many have low levels of moral development and deviant values. The fourth one, delinquents also harbor poor self-concept. Next, research suggests that some delinquents have lower levels of intelligence than do non-delinquents, indicating that they may be unable to foresee the probable consequences of their actions or to understand their significance. Next, delinquents may have more school problems which may contribute to early learning difficulties and may be an indication of risk for later delinquency. Now we look at the various causes of juvenile delinquency. Researchers have been able to uncover a number of factors related to delinquent behavior. The first one among this is broken homes. Homes divided by divorce, death, desertion or lack of affection and understanding can produce great stress in the child, not only before and during the time of separation, but also during subsequent social development. Second one, lack of parental affection. In homes in which children are exposed to warm and affectionate relationships, delinquency is rare. Conversely, when parents, especially fathers, offer little affection to and reject their children, there is a strong likelihood that rebellious or delinquent behavior will be the result. Thus, the father's psychological absence from the home can contribute to delinquency just as much as his physical absence can. The third point, abusive discipline. Rates of delinquency are higher when parents employ abusive and hostile measures of discipline. Adolescents' attitudes of rebelliousness and defiance are likely to be created when whippings, beatings, and other types of physical punishment are used as methods of control. Hostile behavior by adolescents also may persist throughout adult life. This appears to be especially true when individuals start their own families. Those who were abused themselves have a strong tendency to employ similar violent techniques towards their children. The fourth point, unstable parental behavior. Delinquent youths are more apt to be brought up by one or both parents exhibiting maladjustment problems. These problems include emotional disorders, alcoholism or other drug dependencies, antisocial attitudes and sociopathic tendencies. When these problems are combined with patterns of rejection and hostility, delinquent behavior may be the result. Delinquency prevention is the broad term for all efforts aimed at preventing youth from getting involved in criminal or other antisocial activities. Various governments are recognizing the importance of allocating resources for the prevention of delinquency. Prevention services include activities such as abuse education, treatment, family counseling, youth mentoring, parenting education, educational support and youth sheltering. Next, we look into the topic of violence and rape. That sexual harassment, eve teasing, rape and violence among children and adolescents has become one of the major concerns of the day. Violence is defined as the abusive or unjust exercise of power. Non-physical acts like threatening, name-calling, harassment or stalking are also violent acts. Impact of violence on mental health is invariably detrimental. Interpersonal violence among young people aged 11 to 19 is a significant public health concern. Adolescent violence involves behaviors ranging from physical fighting to more severe forms of physical assault that can result in serious injury or death. Life is being threatened by innumerable kinds of violence, and we feel so powerless and helpless at the intensity and the gravity of the matter. We look into some of the following types of violence. The first type is domestic or family violence. This type of violence is an act carried out with the intention or perceived intention of physically hurting another person. The most common domestic violence is exhibited in physically hurting the wife, physical punishment of children, fighting between the siblings, marital rape, family homicide, elder abuse, etc. Based on the assumptions, it is said that adults who were themselves victims of or witnessed violence in their childhood are more likely than those without such a background to act violently towards their spouses or children. Next, verbal violence. This is a common phenomena present in almost all the cultures of the world. The improper treatment or use of words or perversions of meanings or its applications is the method used in this form of violence. At the slightest provocation, people try to gain dominance over the other party by raising their voice in abusive language. The louder you are able to shout, use abusive and filthy language, victory seems to be at your side. This is also very much seen in the family, at the workplace, in the market and in private life too. The next type is psychological violence. This type of violence is the weapon of the strong ones to subdue the weaker ones by causing a type of fear in them. This type of violence is much more harmful than the physical violence. Blackmailing, tarnishing the good name of someone in public, fear of losing one's name and fame, psychological pressures at workplace, fear of family status being lost are some of the psychological violence which takes place in the society. The next type is sexual violence. Sexual violence could be defined as exerting force over another person against his or her will and drag him or her into sexual activity. Everyday newspapers and TV media brings in scores of examples in this type of violence. All such sexual violence ends up in brutal violence either of physical, mental or both. Women and children are the most vulnerable persons in this type of violence. Now we look into the various causes of violence. The first one among the various causes of violence is economic exploitation. Money and wealth is a big buyer, and those who possess it wield a great lot of influence, both positive and negative. Economic exploitation makes the poor still poor and rich further to grow wealthier. The unequal distribution of money and wealth leads to an imbalance in the social life, and it often ends up a sort of violence. The glaring example is that of the French Revolution. In the second cause, we have unemployment. The researchers have come to an important factor regarding the cause of violence, and that is unemployment. The youth is a strong force, and when they are left with nothing worth to do, no income to sustain the family or themselves, the tendency is all the more greater to engage themselves in kinds of works which could be very antisocial. Unemployment destroys the very dignity of a human being and it simply crushes his ego. He feels unwanted and useless and will definitely search out a way of earning something without paying much attention what the means are. This is how the youth of the country, the main workforce, is misled and manipulated. The next cause is lack of education. The global statistics clearly proves that a great number of the population still remain illiterate. Comparing to the previous years, there are more improved facilities for education. But when the majority of the people remain illiterate, the society, the nation and the world at large run the risk of easily getting manipulated by the clever but vicious minds. Thus, lack of education leads to violence. The next cause is moral laws. The moral laws safeguard the interpersonal relationships and builds up a better and strong society. Whenever and wherever the moral laws are tampered with and less attention was given to it, respect for life and value of life had dwindled. Laxity in moral standard of life will clearly reflect in the attitude towards the life. There are already visible signs of this danger in the way human beings are treated. Next cause is media. The media has an important role to play in the field of information. The entire world has become a global village through the power of the media. Anything that happens in the remotest corner of the world is instantly transmitted into the channel telecasted over the entire world. The media has such a power to create opinion. But on the other hand, media can manipulate the information and keep on pumping in wrong and false news and reports regarding the various events that are happening in and around the world. The media influences the rich and the poor, the young and the old in everyday life. It has a tremendous role to play in building up a strong society. It can promote and demote the good value system. The next cause is family breakup. Family is smallest and important cell where the future citizens are carved out. The best and first education into human value system is taught in the families. When the family stability and integrity is lost, the children stake. The children will be the worst victims of such a setup. They are defenseless and most vulnerable in such a broken family. It is important probable that they develop a negative attitude towards life which is very difficult to change or correct in the later years. The next topic we will be discussing is rape or sexual violence. Sexual violence or rape means that someone forces or manipulates someone else into unwanted sexual activity without their consent. Reasons someone might not consent include fear, age, illness, disability, or influence of alcohol or other drugs. Anyone can experience sexual violence including children, teens, adults and elders. Those who sexually abuse can be acquaintances, they can be family members, trusted individuals or even strangers. It is a widespread and is considered to be one of the most traumatic, pervasive and the most common human rights violation. Sexual violence affects millions of people each year. Victims may be ashamed, they may be embarrassed or they may be afraid to tell the police, friends or even family about the violence. Victims may also keep quiet because they have been threatened with further harm if they tell anyone or do not think anyone will help them. People who have experienced sexual violence may be prone to consequences like many physical injuries or bruising, and psychological factors may include depression, anxiety and also even suicidal thoughts. These consequences may be chronic sometimes. Victims may suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. They may experience reoccurring reproductive, gastrointestinal, cardiovascular and also sexual health problems. Now we look at some of the risk factors or causes of rape or sexual violence. which includes alcohol and drug use, delinquency, empathic deficits, general aggressiveness and acceptance of violence, early sexual initiation, preference for impersonal sex and sexual risk taking, exposure to sexually explicit media, hostility towards women, adherence to traditional gender role norms, hypermasculinity, suicidal behavior, prior sexual victimization or perpetration, emotionally unsupportive family environment, poor parent-child relationships, particularly with the fathers, association with sexually aggressive, hypermasculine and delinquent peers, and involvement in a violent or abusive intimate relationship. Now we look at how to prevent sexual and rape violence. The number of initiatives addressing sexual violence is limited and few have been evaluated. The approaches vary, with most interventions being developed and implemented in industrialized countries. How relevant they may be in other settings is not well known. Early interventions and the provision of psychological support may prevent or minimize many of the harmful and lasting psychological impacts of sexual assault. To prevent sexual violence, we must understand and address the factors that put people at risk for or protect them from violence, which are: first, to promote social norms that protect against violence; to teach skills to prevent sexual violence; teaching safe dating and intimate relationship skills to the teens; provide opportunities to empower and support girls and women; strengthening the leadership and opportunities for the girls; improving safety and monitoring in schools and to create protective environments; establishing and consistently applying workplace policies; addressing community level risks through environmental approaches. Sexual violence is a common and a very serious public health problem affecting millions of people each year throughout the world. It is driven by many factors operating in a range of social, cultural and economic contexts. At the heart of sexual violence directed against women is gender inequality. Sexual violence is traumatic because it would be repetitive and sustained over a long period of time in some cases. Now, we look at the summary of the topic. Social problem is any undesirable condition or situation that is judged by a majority of the people within a community to be intolerable and to require group action towards constructive reform. Examples are juvenile delinquency, drug addiction, violence and sexual harassment, crime, prostitution, divorce, chronic unemployment, poverty and mental illness. The World Health Organization, that is WHO, defines an adolescent as any individual between the ages 10 and 19. This age is also known as teenage or teens. Adolescence may be defined as the period within the lifespan when most of the person's biological, cognitive, psychological and social characteristics are changing from what is typically considered childlike to what is considered adult-like. For the adolescent, this period is a dramatic challenge, one requiring adjustment to changes in the self, in the family and in the peer group. During the transition period, adolescents can be influenced by many internal and external factors. With lack of proper guidance, family pressures or family problems, their own anxieties and other societal factors make the adolescents vulnerable to drug use, and they may also end up becoming juvenile delinquents. It is highly likely for them to get addicted, thus resulting in substance abuse. Unstable parental guidance, unemployment, media, no proper education can make the adolescent behave in a violent manner, further leading to negative consequences.